And as it were, Montel Jackson is out of his bout to take on Danaa Batgerel, but it was announced by Tom Feely of Sherdog on February the 14th that in steps El Guapo, Chris Gutierrez, and Matt. Really, when you look at this, I mean, nuts and bolts, this is a fun fight. I would have been down for Montel Jackson.
Of course.
You talk about a fighter that bangs. I mean, Montel Jackson can get it done on the feet for sure, but he's got great jiu-jitsu as well. And when you look at Chris Gutierrez, this is the way that I look at it. I mean, is he the candidate for Sean O'Malley's uncrowned king of the unranked at this point? I mean, you look at it, like, in the UFC, he loses to Raoni Barcelos in his debut, and since then, he hasn't lost a damn fight. Like, yeah, he lost a first-round 10-8 to Cody Durden in a short-notice debut, but since the Barcelos fight, win over McDonald, win over De Freitas, win over Vince Morales, win over Andre Ewell, win over Felipe Colares. And again, for Gutierrez, the only thing that's really kind of bugged me is we don't get to see him fight more often.
And it is unfortunate, but this is a great short notice matchup for Danaa. Like, normally you get this fighter coming in, you don't really know that much. No, we're getting Chris Gutierrez, who is a really good striker, and that's the thing. This could have been on the Fight of the Night screen, if we're being honest, because stylistically, these guys' styles do play into each other. With Danaa Batgerel, where do we start with his striking? He has absurd power for his frame, and he still has a really unique style of striking too. I wouldn't say they're a pure boxer, I wouldn't say they're a pure kickboxer. He uses elbows on the inside, but he's very boxing heavy, don't get me wrong. He's not necessarily like a Cub Swanson or a Dominic Cruz to where you'd say, wow, if I saw a silhouette of them, I'd know exactly who it is. But he does have quite a few skills that set him apart. And this recent run that he's been on, where he's really been able to uptick his aggression, has just paid off in droves. And it'll be really interesting to see how he fights Chris Gutierrez, because both guys have a lot of success from the exact same range, and that is their boxing range. But the difference is that Gutierrez is going to use his low kicks and use his body kicks to then set up his boxing, so he can have more success with his hands. I always go back to the Andre Ewell fight, because that's pretty much the perfect fight to show a kicker how to just beat a boxer who moves really well on their feet, because Gutierrez early on struggled punching him. He couldn't really get in range, and then decided to just start chopping those legs down. And he went to the legs, he went to the body, he even went to the head with those kicks. And as those kicks started to pile up, you could tell the movement of Andre Ewell went from like Sean O'Malley levels in the first round to like, I don't know, Danaa 5000 levels in the third round. It was a big drop-off, and it was 100% attributed to those leg kicks. But that's what I worry about with Chris Gutierrez. It's sort of what I go back to when I said Chael Sonnen, when he knew he had to fight Michael Bisping, he thought, okay, I just have to eliminate the jab, because that's how he sets everything else up. So I don't need to worry about all of his crazy combinations if I can just deal with the jab. Do you think when fighters fight Chris Gutierrez, that's all they're really telling themselves? They go, okay, if defensively I can watch it for the leg kicks, yes, he's a talented fighter, yes, he has more skills, but that's such a big part of his game that if you can eliminate that one area, it does make the fight against Gutierrez quite a bit easier.
Well, that's it. I mean, you look at it, the Vince Morales one. How often do we see a TKO due to leg kicks? And then he goes out and fights Cody Durden. Now, that was on super short notice. Durden wrestles. And then Gutierrez rallies, wins the second and the third. Against Andre Ewell, it was the leg kicks that made the big difference. Against Felipe Colares, he outstruck him. He got out-wrestled a little bit. But again, split decision on his record. Say what you will about the fight. I thought Gutierrez went and won that one on the rewatch. But when I look at this one, Danaa Batgerel, you talk about it, elbows on the inside. Danaa constantly pressures, and when you become a reactive fighter against him, like a Natividad, or pick anybody else, I mean, really, even in the Brandon Davis fight, Danaa didn't give him an inch, and he just goes out there and throws odd punches, like really odd punches. And we talked about it odd angles earlier on in the night, but when you look at it from Danaa, again, left hook, he has 2 left hook knockout wins back-to-back.
They're
really
disgusting.
Quick. Guido Canetti, who looked great against Chris Mutino here recently, but also the win over Natividad. When you watch him fight against Brandon Davis, Davis is one of those guys. It's volume, it's cardio, it's pace. And when Danaa fights him, he doesn't give him a second. He just pours the pressure on him early on, and he's going like right hook to close the distance, overhand right. He's throwing a quick left hook. Like, there are so many things to like about him in his striking, and he's not the most susceptible to the kicks, but again, you say that, and then you fight a guy like Chris Gutierrez, it really does switch things up.
I do think, though, just the result of his range being in that boxing distance is going to eliminate some of those kicks of Gutierrez. Now, when they are in the open space, and when Batgerel is trying to figure out, okay, how do I enter on, the different strikes of Gutierrez, it's going to be tough, and those leg kicks are going to accumulate early. But to me, it becomes, when does Batgerel decide, I'm just going to stay in the pocket? Because if you're in the pocket, leg kicks are really hard to throw when you're chest-to-chest with a person, person, unless your name's Justin Gaethje. He's pretty much the only guy in the UFC who throws those weird, like, kind of top-down leg kicks from the clinch. He's very unique in that capacity. Gutierrez has good leg kicks, but again, they're more from that traditional sense. He likes the calf kick, he likes the thigh kick from the kickboxing range. I think with Danaa constantly being on the inside, though, throwing that left hook to the body, throwing that overhand right, it's not going to give Gutierrez time to set up with his strikes. Now, if this fight goes late, I actually do think Gutierrez has a better cardio out of these two guys, just because I've seen him later on in fights a lot more. I know it's a position he's a lot more comfortable in, so I'm a lot more comfortable telling you that I think Gutierrez has the better cardio out of these two. But I don't know if he's going to be able to make it to the third round because he is a hittable fighter. He is someone who will kind of throw his hands down when he throws his leg kick. And that's going to be a big problem when you're fighting someone like Danaa Batgerel.
When I look at this one, short notice nature, throw it out the window. It's not that short notice. It's a month and a half. So you almost have the full 6 weeks really. Well, you do have the full 6 weeks. So it's not that short notice. And when you look at the odds for this one, Gutierrez opened a plus 130, still roughly there. For Batgerel Danaa, he opened a minus 150. He's still roughly there. So we have a look at the Tapology votes. Surprised to us, they are to you. And right there, 914 total votes, 61% for Batgerel Danaa, 65% by knockout for the 39% that have Gutierrez, 80% by decision. And when we look at it for Batgerel, I mean, he does have a fight of the night against Saldaña. It was, a great fight. It really was. Both guys wearing it by the end of that fight. When I look at this one, though, again, for Batgerel Danaa, training out of Jackson Wing, 3-1 in the UFC, and ultimately, yeah, he swings souvenir mini bats all the time from all totally different angles. He can windmill them. He can really have some fun. For Gutierrez, yeah, throws a ton of kicks, and we've really kind of been feeding a fed horse with that one. Way more experience with Chris Gutierrez, pro and amateur. 10-2 as an amateur, 17-3-1 as a pro. Outside of the UFC, fights with Timur Valiev, 1 a win, 1 a loss. Aaron Phillips, Ray Rodriguez, Jimmy Flick. And I think the team at Factory X is going to have a great game plan in there for Gutierrez to get the win in this one, to go into the later rounds, to wrestle. Now, could I see him having one of those Alexander Hernandez-esque fights in this one where he gets a little tired, he gets a little sloppy, he gets knocked out by Batgerel? 100% I could. But in this one, I like Gutierrez, especially as an underdog in this spot.
Gutierrez just drops his hands when he throws kicks, though, and with someone like Danaa, who is really good at countering, and his timing is so good, and he has genuine one-punch knockout power, I don't think that's a skill you want to have, especially if you're going to be throwing those kicks in close, and that's why I think Danaa is going to be able to counter over the top and land a big hook, so that's why I've got Batgerel.
Both of us in disagreement on this one, but we gotta admit, I mean, it's either Batgerel is going to go out there and knock his blocks off, or Gutierrez just lasts and lasts and lasts like the cat that came back the very next day. It should be a great fight coming up this weekend. I can't wait for this one. Like we said, it could be a possible fight of the night as well. Big time main event coming up. Daukaus taking on the man himself, Curtis Blaydes. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.